with the inauguration of Donald Trump. Let's take you live to Washington, D.C., where in the coming hours, Donald Trump...
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
The 20th of January, 2025 was fairly routine in American history. It wasn't the first time a new president was sworn in, and it won't be the last. However, an internet firestorm erupted when people noticed that Donald Trump took the oath of office for his second term without a Bible. So, what does this mean? Is his presidency even legitimate without the sacred text? Did this break a constitutional requirement? Well, there's a lot to unpack, so let's start with why Trump didn't use the Bible for his oath, and the shocking truth behind it. And then we can go on to answer other questions. What actually happened on the inauguration day? Following his landslide victory, Donald Trump's second inauguration on the 20th of January 2025 was expected to follow the well-established traditions of presidential swearing-in ceremonies. However, the absence of a Bible during Trump's oath of office led to a flurry of online debates, legal interpretations, and media scrutiny. So, what actually did happen that day? As is customary, Chief Justice John Roberts presided over the swearing-in ceremony. However, just as Trump prepared to take the oath, the designated Bibles, one a family heirloom and the other the Lincoln Bible, were not immediately in place when the Chief Justice initiated the oath. Trump raised his right hand as required, but kept his left hand at his side, instead of placing it on a Bible. Apparently, there was no apparent intentional defiance of tradition. Rather, it appeared to be a matter of procedural timing. By the time the Bibles were ready, Trump had already begun repeating the words of the oath. These visuals of Trump taking the oath without a Bible in hand were enough to ignite controversy. As the ceremony unfolded, social media platforms exploded with theories and speculation. Some claimed that without a Bible, Trump's oath was invalid, while others suggested it was an act of defiance against religious tradition. Hashtags such as Biblegate and Not My President began trending on Twitter within minutes, with political commentators and legal analysts weighing in on whether the omission had any legal significance. Mainstream media outlets quickly picked up on the unusual nature of the moment, with some outlets emphasizing the break from tradition while others dismissed it as an inconsequential oversight. So, what does the law actually say? Is Trump's oath even valid now? Well, the US Constitution mandates that every incoming president take an oath before assuming office. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 8 of the Constitution even prescribes the exact wording. It goes like this: I do solemnly swear, or affirm, that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States, and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Notably, there is no constitutional requirement for a Bible or any other religious text to be used during this process. The inclusion of a Bible is more of a tradition rather than a legal obligation. However, including the Bible in the swearing-in ceremony does hold deep symbolic importance in American politics. The Bible has been historically associated with the values of integrity, leadership, and national unity, qualities expected of a president. For many Americans, an oath taken on a Bible signifies a higher moral accountability. Trump's previous inaugurations and public speeches often highlighted his alignment with conservative Christian values, making the omission particularly striking to his base. Some speculated whether the moment was merely an accident, or if it suggested a shift in Trump's relationship with faith-based politics. Others viewed it as an example of how political optics can overshadow legal realities. Let's not delve into speculation or hypersensitivities. Instead, we can jog through the law and history for some perspective. Does the oath require a Bible? The legal perspective. As noted earlier, the use of a Bible during a presidential oath of office is a deeply rooted tradition, but it is not a constitutional requirement. The US Constitution provides clear guidelines regarding the oath, but remains silent on the inclusion of any religious text. This reflects the nation's foundational principle of religious neutrality in government, ensuring that no religious test is imposed on public officials. Despite this legal reality, historical precedent has shaped public expectations, making the presence of a Bible a powerful symbol, though not a legal necessity. Even in the presidential oath, the text offers an alternative to swear, the word affirm, for individuals who may have religious or philosophical objections to oath-taking. This provision was particularly relevant to Quakers and other religious groups that historically refrained from swearing oaths. The framers of the Constitution deliberately left out any reference to a Bible or other religious scripture, ensuring that the oath remained a secular commitment rather than a religious declaration. Further reinforcing this principle, Article 6, Clause 3 of the Constitution states that no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. This clause explicitly prohibits any requirement that would force an officeholder to adhere to a particular religious practice. The use of a Bible, while customary, falls under this category. It is an option, not an obligation. If a president-elect chooses not to use a Bible, their oath remains just as valid under the law. The primary function of the presidential oath is to affirm the incoming leader's commitment to the Constitution. This moment is not about personal faith or religious conviction, but about pledging loyalty to the nation's foundational laws and principles. The phrase "preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution" is the heart of the oath, reinforcing the idea that the president's ultimate responsibility is to uphold the rule of law. However, over time, the use of the Bible has come to symbolize moral integrity and national unity. Many presidents have deliberately chosen specific Bibles with historical or personal significance, reinforcing the idea that the presidency carries a spiritual or ethical weight beyond its legal duties. While this tradition is widely embraced, deviations from it have occurred. Trump's incident was not the first of its kind. Despite a clear legal precedent to such a situation, public reactions to a president not using a Bible can be significant. The United States has a long history of intertwining faith and governance, even though the Constitution explicitly separates church and state. Many Americans view the Bible as a symbol of ethical leadership, and any departure from this tradition can generate controversy. But how did this Bible tradition even start? The origin of the Bible tradition in U.S. inaugurations. The practice of using a Bible during a U.S. presidential inauguration traces its origins back to the first ever presidential inauguration in 1789, when George Washington took the oath of office in New York City. George Washington's decision to use a Bible during his inauguration reflected both his personal faith and the deeply religious character of the newly formed nation. Washington, though often described as a man of measured religious conviction rather than overt piety, was deeply influenced by Christian moral principles. His faith was shaped by Anglican beliefs, Masonic values, and Enlightenment-era ideals of virtue and providence. He frequently invoked divine guidance in his writings and speeches, and while he was careful not to align himself with any one sect, he saw religion as essential to the moral fabric of the new republic. This belief in the necessity of divine favor and moral leadership was particularly crucial in 1789, as the country emerged from the turmoil of the Revolutionary War. Washington's presidency was not just the first under the Constitution, it was a test of whether the Republican experiment could survive. Many Americans had fought and sacrificed in the struggle for independence, and there remained deep anxieties about whether the new system of government would endure. Unlike European monarchies, where rulers claimed divine rights, the American presidency was based on a social contract with the people. The use of a Bible in Washington's inauguration, especially his act of bowing and kissing it, helped convey a sense of legitimacy, bridging the secular nature of the Constitution with the religious and moral expectations of the public. It signaled that, while the United States was not a theocracy, its leaders were expected to govern with righteousness and humility. Washington's reliance on divine providence was evident throughout his military and political career. During the Revolutionary War, he often framed the American cause as one that depended on moral fortitude and divine favor. His famous orders to the Continental Army frequently urged soldiers to uphold discipline, avoid vice, and seek strength through faith. In his farewell address, years after his first inauguration, he reinforced this theme, declaring that religion and morality are indispensable supports to political prosperity. His inauguration, therefore, was not merely a formal transition of power, but a moment to reinforce the values that would define the nation's leadership for generations to come. The inclusion of the Bible in Washington's swearing-in ultimately set a powerful precedent. Even though subsequent presidents were not required to follow suit, most did, recognizing the potent symbolism it carried. As the years passed, the presence of a Bible during the oath-taking ceremony became more than just a tradition. It became a near-sacred ritual, binding each new leader to a history of moral and constitutional fidelity. Most of Washington's successors followed his example, using a Bible during their inaugurations. Over time, the tradition became so ingrained that its absence was seen as unusual or even controversial. Later presidents even began personalizing the practice in various ways. Some chose Bibles with special historical meaning, while others used family heirlooms or even multiple Bibles. For instance, Abraham Lincoln's inaugurations in 1861 and 1865 occurred at moments of profound national crisis, and his choice of a Bible carried both practical and symbolic weight. For his first inauguration, Lincoln had not brought a Bible, and one was hurriedly provided by William Thomas Carroll, the clerk of the Supreme Court. This Bible, bound in burgundy velvet with gilt-edged pages, was an ordinary judicial Bible used for administering oaths. However, because of Lincoln's role in steering the nation through the Civil War and preserving the Union, it gained immense historical significance and is now commonly known as the Lincoln Bible. Its use extended beyond Lincoln's presidency, most notably when Barack Obama selected it for his own swearing-in ceremonies in 2009 and 2013. The Bible's reappearance in 2017 during Donald Trump's inauguration reinforced its status as a tangible link between different presidencies, connecting figures from vastly different eras. Interestingly, Lincoln's second inauguration in 1865 took place as the war was drawing to a close, and his speech that day, emphasizing reconciliation with the South, was steeped in biblical references. In the following century, Franklin D. Roosevelt's approach to the Bible during his 4 inaugurations from 1933 to 1945 also carried immense meaning. Unlike many of his predecessors who simply placed their hand on a closed Bible, Roosevelt deliberately opened it to a specific passage for each ceremony. For his first inauguration, held at the height of the Great Depression, he selected 1 Corinthians 13, a chapter that speaks of faith, hope, and love. This choice reinforced the central theme of his address, calling upon Americans to face their hardships with courage and resilience. As the only president to serve 4 terms, Roosevelt continued this practice in each subsequent inauguration, using different biblical passages to reflect the challenges of the time. During his later terms, particularly as the Second World War raged on, his choices of scripture highlighted the need for unity, sacrifice, and moral strength. Roosevelt thus made the Bible an active part of his message and reinforced his reputation as a leader deeply attuned to the spiritual and emotional needs of the nation. Similarly, John F. Kennedy's 1961 inauguration was historic not only because of his youth and charisma, but also because he was the first Catholic president in American history. Given the long-standing Protestant dominance in American political life, his faith had been a major point of contention during the campaign. To underscore his religious identity, while also demonstrating that his presidency would be guided by the Constitution rather than the Vatican, Kennedy used a Douay Rheims Bible, a Catholic translation that was far less common in Protestant-majority America. His decision to use this Bible marked a milestone in religious inclusivity, sending a message that Catholic Americans had a place at the highest levels of government. However, the Bible itself became something of a logistical issue. On the freezing January morning, it had been placed on the podium, but was not opened due to strong winds. Despite this, its presence was significant, reinforcing Kennedy's commitment to both his personal faith and the broader ideal of religious pluralism in American democracy. Jimmy Carter's inauguration in 1977 was also heavily influenced by his personal faith and his desire to restore moral leadership to the presidency in the wake of the Watergate scandal. A devout Southern Baptist, Carter chose to use a family Bible, reflecting both his religious convictions and his identity as a man deeply rooted in his upbringing and values. His use of a family Bible was particularly meaningful in contrast to the political turmoil of the previous decade, as he had run a campaign centered on honesty, integrity, and personal morality. His decision also connected him to the growing evangelical movement in the United States, which had played a significant role in his election. Carter's inaugural address, which emphasized humility and service, reinforced the message signaled by his choice of Bible, that his presidency would be one of moral accountability and devotion to justice and compassion. Most recently, Joe Biden's 2021 inauguration took place under extraordinary circumstances, amid the COVID-19 pandemic, and just 2 weeks after the storming of the US Capitol. His decision to use a massive 127-year-old family Bible, which had been in the Biden family since 1893, underscored both his personal faith and his sense of continuity. The Bible, bound in gold-edged leather, had been used in every major oath Biden had taken throughout his political career, including his swearing in as a senator in 1973 and as vice president in 2009 and 2013. Its size and weight made it an imposing presence, a physical representation of the deep-rooted values he carried into office. As only the second Catholic president after Kennedy, Biden's use of a deeply personal religious text reflected his lifelong connection to his faith and his belief in its role as a guiding force during times of adversity. Given the contentious political climate of his inauguration, his choice of Bible also served as a symbol of perseverance, duty, and a return to stability. But what about not having a Bible present? Well, before we move on to Trump's case, let's see what history tells us. Historical precedents. When presidents didn't use the Bible. History provides multiple instances where presidents either chose not to use a Bible or deviated from the tradition in significant ways. These exceptions illustrate that the presence of a Bible is a custom, not a constitutional mandate, and that personal beliefs, historical circumstances, and logistical challenges have occasionally influenced the way presidents take their oath of office. John Quincy Adams became the 6th President of the United States on March 4, 1825, but his inauguration broke with tradition in a striking way. Instead of placing his hand on a Bible, Adams took the oath while resting his hand on a book of law. Adams, a devoted Unitarian and a scholar of law and governance, believed that the oath of office was fundamentally a legal commitment rather than a religious one. By choosing a legal text instead of a Bible, he emphasized that his primary duty was to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the United States rather than any religious doctrine. His decision reflected Enlightenment-era thinking, which prioritized reason, secular governance, and the rule of law over religious symbolism in state affairs. Adams' choice did not generate widespread controversy at the time, but it was a rare move that distinguished him from his predecessors and successors. His commitment to constitutionalism over tradition made a lasting statement about the role of religion in public office. Similarly, Theodore Roosevelt's swearing in on September 14, 1901, was unique not because of any deliberate decision, but due to the urgency of the situation. After President William McKinley was assassinated in Buffalo, New York, Roosevelt had to take the oath of office quickly to ensure continuity of government. The ceremony took place in the home of Ansley Wilcox, a prominent Buffalo attorney, and was conducted by U.S. District Judge John R. Hazel. Due to the unexpected nature of the event, no Bible was present at the time of the swearing-in. Roosevelt placed his hand on nothing at all and simply recited the oath from memory. Despite this deviation, Roosevelt's presidency was never questioned on legal grounds. The Constitution requires the president to take an oath, but does not specify that it must be done with a religious text. Roosevelt's case proved that tradition could be set aside in moments of crisis without compromising the legitimacy of the office. Lyndon B. Johnson's swearing in on November 22, 1963, similarly, remains one of the most famous inaugurations in American history, not only because of its tragic circumstances, but also because of the deviation from tradition. After President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Johnson was sworn in aboard Air Force One before the plane departed for Washington, D.C. In the chaos that followed the assassination, officials scrambled to locate a Bible for the oath. However, the only religious text available on the aircraft was a Catholic missal, a small prayer book containing passages from the Bible and other liturgical texts. Since Kennedy had been the first Catholic president, it is believed that the missal belonged to him or one of his aides. With no Bible on hand, Johnson placed his left hand on the missal as he took the oath of office, administered by U.S. District Judge Sarah T. Hughes. Interestingly, she was the first woman to administer the presidential oath, The image of Johnson taking the oath while standing beside the grief-stricken Jacqueline Kennedy in her blood-stained clothing became one of the most iconic photographs in US history. The use of the missal instead of a Bible was largely overshadowed by the gravity of the moment, and no legal objections were raised. Franklin Pierce's inauguration on March 4, 1853, also stands out, not because he refused to use a Bible, but because he chose to break another long-standing tradition, kissing the Bible after taking the oath. At the time, it was customary for presidents not only to swear on a Bible, but also to conclude the ceremony by kissing the book as a gesture of reverence. However, Pierce, a devout Episcopalian, declined to do so. Another significant aspect of Pierce's inauguration was his decision to deliver his entire inaugural address from memory, the first and only president to do so. Some historians speculate that Pierce's personal grief may have played a role in his choices that day. Just 2 months before his inauguration, Pierce's 11-year-old son, Benjamin, was killed in a tragic train accident. The loss deeply affected both Pierce and his wife, Jane, who reportedly viewed it as divine punishment. Despite these exceptions, the presence of a Bible during presidential inaugurations has persisted as a symbolic gesture that reassures the public and connects each administration to the country's historical and moral foundations. So, what does the Christian faith say about all of this? Religious and philosophical views on oaths. The idea behind oath-taking is to invoke divine or moral authority as a guarantor of one's honesty. By placing one's hand on a sacred text, historically, the Bible in Western societies, the person taking the oath is making a solemn pledge in the presence of a higher power. The belief is that divine oversight discourages perjury or dishonesty, as breaking an oath sworn before God would result in spiritual or moral consequences. This concept dates back to ancient civilizations. In early European legal traditions, oaths were sworn on religious relics, such as saints' bones, sacred objects, or holy books. The idea was that lying under oath would not only be a legal offense, but also a sin that carried divine retribution. While many American presidents and officials have sworn on a Bible as a sign of their commitment to truth and duty, Christianity itself presents a complex perspective on oath-taking. Some Christian denominations uphold the practice, viewing it as an honorable act that acknowledges God's authority. Others, however, reject it entirely. The Bible contains passages that both support and discourage oaths. For instance, Jesus' Sermon on the Mount goes like this: "Again you have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn.' But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil." In this passage, Jesus rejects the reliance on formal oaths, urging his followers to be always truthful. Then there are the words of the Apostle James, who stated, "Above all, my brothers, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or by any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no be no, so that you may not fall under condemnation." This verse reinforces the idea that truthfulness should be inherent in a believer's character, making the need for formal oaths obsolete. Some Christian denominations take these verses as absolute prohibitions against swearing oaths. For instance, the Quakers believe that all speech should be honest, and therefore they refuse to swear oaths in court or other official settings. Instead, they simply affirm that they will tell the truth. The Mennonites and Anabaptists hold a similar position, emphasizing that a Christian's word should always be truthful. Then there are the Jehovah's Witnesses. While not universally opposed to oaths, Jehovah's Witnesses avoid swearing on religious texts and instead provide affirmations when required by law. Despite these religious objections, the US legal system accommodates individuals who choose to affirm rather than swear. Even though some Christians reject the practice, the use of the Bible in American inaugurations and legal settings reflects the country's deep historical ties to Christianity. The faith has played a significant role in shaping the moral and ethical framework of the US, and symbols like the Bible remain powerful even in a pluralistic society. The presence of a Bible at official ceremonies is often seen as a nod to tradition, continuity, and the moral responsibilities of leadership. However, the shifting religious landscape of the United States has led to increasing debates over the necessity and inclusivity of religious symbols in government functions. In modern times, some officials have opted for alternatives to the Bible, such as the US Constitution or other significant texts that align with their personal beliefs. As American society becomes more religiously diverse, the once unquestioned tradition of swearing on a Bible has come under scrutiny. For instance, while most US presidents have used a Bible, some officials and judges have opted for texts that better represent their beliefs, such as the Quran, used by Congressman Keith Ellison in 2007, or the US Constitution. Also, as noted earlier, the US legal system permits individuals to affirm their commitment instead of swearing an oath, accommodating those who oppose oath-taking for religious reasons. Moreover, with a growing percentage of Americans identifying as secular or religiously unaffiliated, the expectation that public officials must use a Bible for their oaths has weakened. At the same time, historical and biblical perspectives highlight the tension within Christianity itself regarding the validity of oaths. While many Christians view oath-taking as a solemn responsibility, others reject it altogether, advocating for a simpler standard of honesty in all aspects of life. So, what's next for Trump? Did Trump's oath without a Bible change anything? On the 20th of January, 2025, President Donald Trump took the oath of office for his second term without placing his hand on a Bible. Legally, this deviation had no impact on the validity of his oath, as the US Constitution does not mandate the use of a Bible during the swearing-in ceremony. Politically, however, this break from tradition ignited significant debate and controversy. The absence of the Bible during the ceremony led to widespread speculation and discussion across various media platforms. Some commentators viewed the move as a deliberate departure from established norms, while others considered it a non-issue, emphasizing the legal sufficiency of the oath. Public perception of the event was mixed. Supporters of President Trump often downplayed the significance of not using a Bible, focusing instead on his policy initiatives and governance. Critics, on the other hand, interpreted the omission as a disregard for historical customs and a potential signal of broader shifts in the administration's approach to traditional values. Media interpretations varied, with some outlets highlighting the legal irrelevance of the Bible's absence, while others delved into the symbolic implications of breaking such a long-standing norm. As of now, it remains uncertain whether this departure from tradition will redefine future inaugurations or remain a singular anomaly. The incident has sparked discussions about the balance between legal mandates and ceremonial customs, potentially influencing how future inaugurations are conducted. Only time will tell if this moment marks the beginning of a new approach to presidential inaugurations. President Trump has already taken several actions since his inauguration that align with his stated objectives. Notably, he has signed multiple executive orders aimed at reshaping federal policies and institutions. For instance, on January 31, 2025, President Trump signed an executive order mandating the elimination of 10 existing regulations for every new regulation introduced. This 10-to-1 deregulation initiative aims to reduce governmental red tape and stimulate economic growth by simplifying the regulatory environment. He also issued executive orders to intensify immigration enforcement. He effectively closed the southern border to asylum seekers, citing concerns over an invasion, and deployed additional US troops to the area. He also took steps to reverse previous healthcare policies, particularly those aimed at controlling drug spending. He rescinded an executive order that directed the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation to explore new payment models to limit drug costs. Moreover, on February 7, 2025, President Trump announced the creation of the White House Faith Office, intended to strengthen the administration's engagement with religious communities. These actions clearly reflect President Trump's commitment to his policy agenda. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.